Hello learners. So in this module, we will be discussing around the strategy analysis. Now, the topics of this module will be introduction, analyze the current state, define the future state of the business, assess the risk log, and define the change strategy. Now, to start with the introduction, so strategy defines the most efficient way to apply the capabilities of an enterprise in order to reach the desired set of the goals or objectives. Now, the strategies may exist for the entire enterprise or for a division, for a department, or for a region, or even for a product, project, or iteration. Now, the strategy analysis knowledge area describes the business analysis work that must be performed to collaborate with the stakeholders in order to identify a need, strategic, and technical importance that is for the business need that enables the enterprise to address that need and align the result align the resulting strategy for the change with the higher or lower level strategies. Now, the strategy analysis is more focused on defining the future and transition states needed to address the business needs. Now, the work required is defined by the both by that need and the scope of the solution space. And also it covers the strategic thinking in the business analysis as well as the discovery or imagining of possible solution so that will enable the enterprise to create greater value for stakeholders and or capture more value to itself. And that is why strategic thinking will be helpful for a business analysis to do so or to create some strategy for any iteration, for any product, for any project, or even for the department, region, division, or for the entire enterprises as well. Now, we talk more about the strategy analysis. So it provides the context to the requirement analysis and design the definition for a given change. And strategy analysis should be performed as a business need is identified. This allows the stakeholders to make the determination of whether to address that need or not. Now, the strategy analysis is an ongoing activity that assesses any change in that need and in its context. So, any new information that may indicate that an adjustment to the change strategy may be required. Then the following image illustration is the spectrum of the value as a business analysis activities progress from delivering potential value to actual value. Now, if we see, so if we go from left to right, so we have first potential, and here we do the strategy analysis. So we will talk about the needs and the solution scope. We will define the needs and we will discussing around the needs, and then we can also derive the solution scopes. And after doing the strategy analysis, so we will be discussing around the requirement analysis and the design definition. And then last we have the solution evaluation. And in the requirement analysis and definition, design definition, so we will be discussing around the requirements and what we have designed for the end product. And now coming to the solution evaluation. So we will have some POCs, proof of concept, or some prototype. And after getting approval for the prototype, so we will have some pilot batch or beta version of the software or the product for the limited group of the people. And then after successfully implementing that pilot project or pilot software at the beta version of the software, so we will create it as an operating. So that is why the strategy analysis is must. for any organization or for any project, because it is dependent on the final solution evaluation also. And then we have, when performing strategy analysis, business analyst must consider the context in which they are working and how predictable the range of possible outcome is. Now, when a change will have a predictably outcome, the future state and the possible transition state can typically be clearly defined. And here, a clear strategy can be planned out. And here, if the outcome of a change is difficult to predict, the strategy may need to be focused more on mitigating the risk and testing the assumption and changing the course until a strategy that will succeed in reaching the business goals that can be identified or until the initiative has ended. Now, this task may be performed in any order, so they are often performed concurrently, as strategy must be shaped by what is actually achievable. And then the strategy may be captured in a strategic plan, product vision, or business cases, or the product roadmap, or other artifacts. Now, the strategy analysis knowledge area include the following tasks. So first we have the analyze the current state. So where we understand the business need and how it relates to the way the enterprise functions today. It sets a baseline, the context for the change. And then we are defining the future state. And after that, in that, we are defining the goals and the objective that will demonstrate that the business need has been satisfied and defines what part of the enterprise need to change in order to meet those goals or objectives. And then the assess risk. Now it is very crucial to understand the uncertainties around the change. Consider the effect those uncertainty may have on the ability to deliver the value to the change. And it is recommended action to address the risk where appropriate. And after that, we have to define the change strategy. Now, it we have to perform the gap analysis between the current and the future state and assess the options for achieving the future state and recommended highest value approach for the reaching the future state, which including the any transition state may be required along the way. Now, if we talk about the business analysis core concept model, so that describes the relationship among six core concepts. And the following table describe the usage and application of each of the core concept within the context of the strategy analysis. So if we have any core concept like change, so here change means the act of the transformation is respond to a need. And during the strategy analysis and the business analyst, so we have to define the future state and and develop a change strategy to achieve the future state. And where we have the concept of need, so it is the problem or opportunity to be addressed. And during the strategy analysis, so the business analyst identify the needs within the current state and prioritize needs to determine the desired future state. And when we have the concept of solution, so it is the specific way of satisfying one or more needs in the context. Now, during the strategy analyst, the business analyst define the scope of the solution as part of the developing the change strategy. And if we have the concept of stakeholders, so stakeholder means a group of individual with the relationship the change, need, or the solution. And the, during the strategy analysis, business analysts collaborate with the different stakeholders to understand the business need and to develop a change strategy and future state that will meet those needs. And when we have the concept of value, it is the worth or the importance or the usefulness of something to a stakeholder in a context. During a change, during a strategy analysis, so the business analyst must examine the potential value of the solution to determine if a change is justified or not. And then where we have the concept of context. So here context means the circumstances that influence or are influenced by and provide understanding of the change. Now, during the strategy analysis, so the business analyst considered the context of the enterprise in developing the change strategy. So, this is the business analysis core concept model, which describes the relationships and how it works. Now, after this, if we talk about the analyzing the current state, so first we talk about the purpose. So the purpose of analyzing the current state is to understand the reason why an enterprise needs to change some of the aspect how it operates and what would be directly and indirectly affected by the change. And then if we talk about its description, then we have the starting point for any change is an understanding of why the change is needed, and potentially change is triggered by a problem or opportunity that can not be addressed without altering the current state. And then business analysts work to help the stakeholder enable the change by exploring and articulating the business needs that drive the desire to change. And without clearly understood business needs, it is impossible to develop a coherent strategy. And also, the resulting change initiative is almost certain to be driven by a mix of conflicting stakeholder demands. And then the change always occurs in a context of existing stakeholder processes, technologies, and the policies, which constitute the current state of the enterprise. Now, the business analyst examine the current state in the context of the business needs to understand what may influence proposed changes and what will affected by them. And then the current state is explored in just enough details to validate the need for a change or the change strategy. Now, understanding the current state of the enterprise prior to the change is necessary to identify what will need to change to achieve a desired future state. And how the effect of the change will be assessed. And here, the scope of the current state describe the important existing characteristic of the environment. Here we have the boundaries of the current state scope that are determined by the components of the enterprise and its environment as they relate to directly to the needs. Now, the current state can be described on different levels, that is ranging from an entire enterprise to the smaller component of a solution. That is, creating a model of the current state might require collaboration throughout or outside the enterprise. For a small effort, the scope might be only small component of an or enterprise for a group of people. And the current state of an enterprise is rarely static while a change is being developed and implemented. Now, after understanding this, so if we talk about the inputs, so first we have the elicitation result. Now, it is used to define and understand the current state. Then we have the needs. So these are two main inputs which we require. Now, in the needs, so we have the problems or opportunities faced by the enterprise or the organization that is often launches the business analysis work to better understand these needs. If we talk about the elements which we have, then we have the business needs. Then the business needs are the problem and the opportunities of the strategic importance faced by the enterprise. An issue encountered in the organization such as customer complaint, loss of revenue, or a new market opportunity. Usually, it triggers the evaluation of a business need. And a business need may be identified at many different levels of the enterprise, such as from the top down, strategic goal that needs to be achieved, and from the bottom to top. So, problem with the current state of the process or function or the system, and from the middle management. So it could be a manager needs additional information to sound the decision, or mm, they must have to perform additional functions to meet the business objective. And then the external drivers. So there will be some external drivers like customer demands or business competition in the marketplace. So those will drive the different business need. Now, the definition of business need is frequently the most critical step in any business analysis. Okay. Now, a solution of that must satisfy the business needs to be considered successfully. Now, the way of the need is defined determines which alternative solutions will be considered, which stakeholder will be consulted, and which solution approaches will be evaluated. Now, the business needs are always expressed from the perspective of an enterprise, and that is not that only particularly for the stakeholders. And then the business needs are often identified or expressed along with the presumed solutions. Now, the business analyst should question the assumption and the constraint that are generally buried in the statement of the issue to ensure that the correct problem is being solved and the widest possible range of alternative solutions are considered. Here, a solution to a set of business needs must have the potential to generate benefits for the enterprise or its stakeholders or avoid the losses that would otherwise occur. Now, after understanding the business need, we have organizational structure and culture. Now, organizational structure defines the formal relationship between the people working in an or enterprise. Now, while communication channel and relationships that are not limited to the structure, they are heavily influenced by it. And also, reporting structure may aid or limit the potential change. And then the organizational culture is the beliefs, values, and norms shared by the members of an organization. These beliefs drive the action taken by an organization. And here the business analyst perform the cultural assessment to identify if the cultural change are required to better achieve the goals or not. and then identify whether the stakeholder understand the rationale for the current state of the enterprise and the value delivered by it. And last, ascertain whether the stakeholder view the current state as the satisfactory or if the change is needed or not. And then after having this, we have the capabilities and the processes. So the capabilities and the processes describe the activities an enterprise perform. Now they also include the knowledge and the enterprise has, the product and the service it provides, the function it supports, and the method it uses to make the decision. Now, core capabilities or processes describe the essential functions of an enterprise that differentiate it from the others. Now, they are measured by the performance indicators that can be used to assess the benefit of change. Now, most of the time, business analysts may use the capability centric view of the enterprise when looking for an innovative solution that combine the existing capability to produce the new outcome. And here, capability based view is useful in this situation because the capabilities are generally organized in a functional hierarchy with the relationship of to the other capabilities too. And it is making it easier to identify any gaps. And then a process centric view of the enterprise when looking for a ways to improve the performance of the current activity. Now here the process based view is very useful in some situation because the processes are organized in an end to end fashion across the enterprise to deliver the value to its customer, and it is making it easier to ensure that a change does not in fact increase the performance. Now, after having this, so we have technology and infrastructure. So, information system used by enterprise support people in executing the processes, making decisions, and in interaction with suppliers and customers. So, the infrastructure describes the enterprise's environment with respect to physical component and capabilities. Now, the infrastructure can include components such as computer hardware, physical plants, logistic, as well as their operation and upkeep. And after having this, so we have the policies. So here, policies define the scope of decision making at the different level of the enterprise. Now they generally address the routine operation rather than the strategic change. They ensure that decisions are made correctly, provide the guidance to staff on the permitted and the appropriate behavior of action, and support the governance and determine when and how a new resources can be acquired. Now here, identification of the relevant policies may shape the scope of the solution space and may be constrained on the type of the action that can be pursued. And then we have the internal assets. Now, business analysts identify the enterprise asset used in the current state. Now, here resources can be tangible or intangible, such as financial resources, patents, reputation, brand names. So here we have some tangible and intangible resources. So we have to understand that as well in the current state. And we have the business architecture. Now, no part of the current state should be addressed in complete isolation from the rest. And here, the business analyst must understand how all of these elements of the current state fit together and support one another in order to recommend the change that will be effective, and the existing business architecture typically meets an assortment of business and stakeholder needs. And if those needs are not recognized or do not continue to be met by a proposed transition or the future state, so the changes are likely to be result in the loss of value. So that is why we have to understand that. And then we have the external influences. So there are some external influences on the enterprise that do not participate in a change that might present a constraints, dependency, or diverse on the current state. Now, here, the sources of the external influencer include the industry structure. So the industry structure is the individual industry which have distinct ways in which value is increased within the industry. This is the particularly important influencer if a proposed change involves entering a new industry. Then we have the competitors, the nature and the intensity of the competitors between the enterprises within the industry can be significant. Here, the new entry of the new campaigner may also change the nature of the industry or increase the competition. So, suppose you are doing a business of XYZ thing or XYZ product, and suppose you have a new competitor in the market, then it is very crucial or it is very critical to understand the nature of their competition or how they operate or what kind of service they provide or what kind of product they make. And then we have the customers. Now, the size and the nature of existing and potential customer segment can provide the such influences such as negotiating the power and the degree of price sensitivity. And it is alternatively the emergence of new alternative ways that customer can meet their needs, and it may drive the enterprise to deliver the greater values. And then the suppliers. So here the variety and the diversity of the suppliers might be an influencer, as can the power that suppliers have over their customer. And then the political and regulatory environment. So there is often influences from the current and the potential impact of laws and regulations upon the industry. And then finally we have the technology. Now the productivity, enhancing the potential of recent and expected technology innovations might influence the need. And then we have the techniques. If we talk about the techniques, so we have benchmarking and the market analysis. So it provides an understanding of where there are where there are opportunities for the improvement in the current state. So specific framework that may be useful include five forces analysis, PASTE, STEAM, ADVO, and others. And then we have the business capacity analysis. So it identifies the gaps and the priorities them in relation to the values and risk. And then we have the business model canvas. So it provides an understanding of the value proposition that the enterprise satisfy its customer, and it is the critical factor in delivering the value. And also it resulting the cost and revenue streams. It is very helpful for understanding the context for any change and identifying the problems and opportunities that may have the most significant impact. Then we have the business cases. Now it is used to capture the information regarding the business need and opportunities. And we have the concept modeling. It is used to capture key terms and the concept in the business domain, and it defines the relationship between them. And we have the data mining. It is used to obtain the information on the performance of an enterprise. Then we have the document analysis. So it is used to review existing system, contracts, and business procedures or policies, standards, and the regulations as well. And then we have the focus groups. Now it is used to identify and understand the idea and the attitudes from the group. And then we have the interface analysis. So it is used to understand the interaction and the characteristic of the interaction between the two entities such as two system or two organization or two people or the roles as well. We have the interviews. Now, it is used to ask the question of stakeholder to uncover the needs, identify the problems, or discover the opportunities. Then we have the mind mapping. It is used to generate many ideas from the group of stakeholders in a short period and also to organize and prioritize those ideas. Then we have the observation. Now it is used to gain the insight how the task is currently done, possibly in different location and in different circumstances. Now we have the process analysis. Now in the process analysis, it is used to understand the current processes and identifies the opportunities for improvement in those processes. Then we have the process modeling. So it is used to elicit the processes with the stakeholders during the elicitation activities. Then we have the survey or questionnaire. It is used to elicit business analysis information, including the information about the customer, products, work practice, attitudes from a group of people in a structured way in a relatively short period of time. And then we have the workshop. It is used to elicit the business analysis information, is including information about the customers, product, or work practices and attitudes from a group of people in a collaborative and facilitated way. If we talk about the peoples which are involved, then we have the stakeholders. Now, what kind of stakeholders we have? So first we have the customers. So makes it makes use of the existing solution and might have input about the issue with the current solution. Then we have the domain subject matter expert. So they have the expertise in some aspect of the current state. Then we have the end user. It directly uses the solution and might have the input about the solution or issues with the current solution. Then we have the implementation subject matter expert. So they have the expertise in some aspect of the current state. Then we have the operational support. So they directly involved in supporting the operation of the organization and provides the information on their ability to support the operations of an existing solution and also as well as the any known issues. And then we have the project manager. So it may use the information on the current state as input to planning. Then we have the regulator. So they can inform the interpretation of the relevant regulation that can apply to the current state in the form of the business policies, business rules, procedures, or role responsibilities. Now, the regulator might have the unique input to the operational assessment, as there might be a new laws or regulations with which to comply. Then we have the sponsor. So, who might have some context of or performance of the existing solution. Then we have the supplier. So who might be an external influencer of the current state. And then we have the lead tester. So they are able to provide the information about the issues with any existing solution. And now, after understanding this, so let's understand the outputs. So first we have the current state description. So the context of the enterprise's scope, capabilities, resources, performance and cultures, dependency and infrastructure, there could be some external influencers and significant relationship between these elements. Then we have the business requirement, the problem, opportunity or constraint, which is defined based on an understanding of the current state. Then we have the defining the future state. Now, if we talk about the purpose of defining the future state is to determine the set of necessary conditions to meet the business need. Now, if we talk about the description, so we have all purposeful change must include a definition of the success. Now, business analysts work to ensure that the future state of the enterprise is well defined and that is achievable with the resources available and that the key stakeholders have a shared consensus vision of the outcome. As with the current state analysis, the purpose of this future state analysis is not create a comprehensive description of the outcome at a level of detail that will directly support the implementation. Now, the future state will be defined at the level of the detail that are allow for competing strategies to achieve the future state to be identified and assessed. Provides a clear definition of the outcomes that will satisfy the business needs and the details of the scope of the solution space. Then allows for value associated with the future state to be addressed and enables consensus to be achieved among the key stakeholders. Now, the future state description can include any context about the proposed future state. It describes it describes the new, removed, modified component of an enterprise. It can also include the changes to the boundaries of the organization itself, such as entering the new market or performing a merger or acquisition. Here, the future state can also be simple change to existing component of an organization, such as changing in a step in a process or removing a feature from an existing application. Now, the description that may include the visual models and the text that clearly show the scope boundaries and details and all the relevant relationships between the entities and are identified and described. Now, the efforts required to describe the future state varies depending on the nature of the change. Now, this describing the future state allows the stakeholder to understand the potential value that can be realized from a solution, which can be used as a part of the decision making process or it is regarding the change strategy. And in an environment where changes result in predictable outcomes and predictable delivery of values and where there are a large number of possible changes that can increase the values. The purpose of the future state analysis is to gather the sufficient information to make the best possible choices among the potential options. Now, in cases where it is difficult to predict where values realized by change, the future state may be defined by the identification of the appropriate performance measure, and change strategy will support the exploration of the multiple options. Now, if we talk about the input, then we have the business requirement. It has all the problems, opportunities, constraints that are that the future state will address. Now, if we talk about the elements, then we have the business goal and objective. So, the future state can be described in terms of the business objectives or goals in order to guide the development of the change strategy and identify the potential value. Now, here the business goals and the objective describes the end that the organization is seeking to achieve. And here, goals and objectives can relate to the changes that our organization wants to accomplish or current condition that it wants to maintain. Here, the goals are longer term, ongoing, qualitative statement of the state or condition that our organization is seeking to establish and maintain. Now, some of the examples of the business goals that include create a new capacity such as the new product or service that address a competitive disadvantage or create a new competitive advantage. Then improve revenue by increasing the sales or reducing the cost. Then increase the customer satisfaction, increase the employee satisfaction, comply with the new regulation, improve the safety, reduce time to deliver the product or service. And then if we talk about the scope of solution space, so those are the decision must be made about the range of the solution that will be considered to meet the business goals and objectives. Now the scope of the solution is which defines which kind of the option will be considered when investigating the possible solution. It is including the change of the organizational structure or culture or capabilities and processes, technology and infrastructure, policies, products, services, or even creating or changing the relationship between the organizations currently outside the scope of the extended enterprise. Now, we have the constraint. So the constraint describe the aspect of the current state, aspect of the planned future state that may not be changed by the solution, and it is not a mandatory element of the design. Now they must be carefully examined to ensure that they are accurate and justifiable. Then we have the organizational structure and culture. Now the formal and informal working relationship that exist within the enterprise may need to be changed to facilitate the desired future state. Now here changes to the reporting lines and encourage the teams to work more closely together and facilitate the alignment of the goals and objective. Now here the elements of the organizational structure and culture may need to be changed to support the future state. Then the capabilities and processes. So we have identified the new kind of the activities or changes in a way that in a way activities will be performed to realize the future state. Here, new or changed capabilities or processes will be needed to deliver the new product or services. It is to comply with the new regulation or to improve the performance of the enterprise. Then we have the technology and infrastructure. If the current technology and infrastructure are insufficient to meet the business need, the business analyst identifies the changes necessary for the desired future state. The existing technology may impose the technical constraint on the design of the solution. This may include the development languages, hardwares, the software platforms, and application software that must be used. And then we have the policies. Now, the current policies are insufficient to meet the business need. The, the business analyst identifies the changes necessary for the desired future state. Now, the policies are very common sources of constraint on the solution or on the solution space. In some instances, the change to an existing policy may open up the alternative solution that would not otherwise be considered. Then we have the business architecture. The element of any future state must effectively support one another and all contribute to the meeting the business goals and objective. And in addition, they should be integrated into the overall desired future state of the enterprise as a whole or and support the future state. And we have the internal asset. The analysis of resources might indicate that the existing resources needs to be increased or required increased capabilities or that new resources need to be developed. Then we have identify the assumption. Most strategies are predicated on a set of assumptions that will determine whether or not the strategy can be succeed, particularly when operating in a highly uncertain environment. Then we have the potential value. Now, meeting the business objective alone does not justify the transition to the future state. Now, the potential value must be evaluated to see if it is sufficient to justify a change or not. Now, after having this, if we talk about some guidelines and the tools, then we have the current state description. So it provides the context within within which the work needs to be completed. And it is often used as a starting point of the future state. And then we have the metrics and key performance indicators. Now here, KPIs and metrics which will be used to determine whether the desired future state has been achieved or not. And then we have the organizational strategy. So it describes a path, method, or approach an enterprise or organization will take to achieve its desired future state. This can be implicitly or explicitly stated. Now, after understanding this, if we talk about the techniques, so we have the acceptance and evaluation criteria. So it is used to identify what may take the future state acceptable or how option may be evaluated. Then we have the balanced scorecard. So it is used to set the target for measuring the future state. Then we have the benchmarking and market analysis. So it is used to make a decision about the future state business objective. Then we have the brainstorming. So it is used to collaboratively come up with the ideas for the future state. Then we have the business capability analysis. So it is used to prioritize the capability gaps in relation to the value and the risk. Then we have the business model canvas that is used to plan the strategy for the enterprise by mapping out the needed infrastructure, target customer base, financial cost structure, and revenue streams that is required to fulfill the value proposition to the customers in the desired future state. And then we have the decision analysis. It is used to compare the different future state options and understand which is the best option. And then we have the decision modeling. So it is used to model the complex decision regarding the future state option. And then we have the financial analysis. So it is used to estimate the potential financial returns to be delivered by the proposed future state. And then we have the interviews. So it is used so it is used to stakeholder is used to talk to stakeholders to understand their desired future state and which needs they want to address and what desired business objective they want to meet. Then we have the lesson learned. So it is used to determine which opportunities for improvement will be addressed and how the current state will be improved upon. Then we have the metrics and KPIs. So it is used to determine when the organization has succeeded in achieving the business objective. Then mind mapping. So it is used to develop the ideas for the future state and understand the relationship between them. Then we have the organizational modeling. So it is used to describe the roles, responsibilities, and the reporting structure that would exist within the future state organization. And then we have the process modeling. So it is used to describe how work would occur in the future state. And then we have the scope modeling. So it is used to define the boundaries of the enterprise of the future state. Now, in the workshop, it is used it is used to work with the stakeholders to collaboratively describe the future state. And then if we talk about the stakeholders, so we have customer, and here customer might be targeted purchasers or consumers in a future state who might be or might not be ready or able to consume the new state. Then we have the domain subject expert, domain SMEs, we can say. So these are the people who provide the insight into the current state and potentially future state. And then we have the end users. So they are expected to use or be a component of a solution that implements the future state. Then we have the implementation subject matter expert. So they provide the information regarding the feasibility of achieving the future state. Then the operational support. So they will directly involve in supporting the operation of the enterprise. They also provide the information on the ability to support the operational operation of a proposed future state. And then we have the project manager. So they might have the input on the what is reasonable and manageable desired future state. And then we have the regulator. So they ensure that all the rules, regulations are adhered or not. And we have sponsors. So that helps to determine which business need to be addressed or a set of the business objective that might be a future state will achieve. So it authorizes, so they authorize and ensure funding to the support moving towards the future state. And then we have the supplier. So who might be help into defining the future state if they are supporting the delivery of the change or deliver any part of the future state of operation. And then the tester. Now here they are responsible for ensuring the envisioned future state can be sufficiently tested and can help set an appropriate level of quality to target. Now, after understanding this, if we talk about the output of the future state, we have the business objective. So the desired direction that the business wishes to pursue in order to achieve the future state. And we have the future state description. Now the future state description includes the bounty of the proposed new, removed or modified components of the enterprises and the potential value expected from the current future state. Now the description might include the desired future capabilities, policies, resources, dependency, infrastructure, external influencer, and the relationship between each element. Then we have the potential value. So here the value that may be realized by implementing the proposed future state. And then we also have to do the assess risk. Now the purpose of that activity is the purpose of assessing the risk is to understand the undesirable consequences of internal and external forces on the enterprise during the transition to or once in the future state and understanding of the potential impact of those forces can be used to make the recommendation about the course of action. Now, if we talk about the description and assessing the risk, which includes analyzing and managing them. So the risk might be related to the current state or the desired future state or a change itself or a change strategy or any task being performed by the enterprise. So the risks are analyzed for the possible consequences if the risk occurs, impact of those consequences, likelihood of the risk, potential time frame when the risk might occur, and then the collection of risk is used as an input or coordinating a change strategy. Risk assessment can conclude the choosing to accept a risk if either the effort required to modify the risk or the level of risk outweigh the probable loss. If the risks are understood and the change proceed, then the risk can be managed and minimize their overall impact to the value. Now, if we talk about the inputs, so we have inputs like business objective, then we have the elicitation results, then we have the influencers, potential values, and the requirements. And if we talk about the elements, so elements are unknown. So whenever assessing a risk, so there will be uncertainty in the likelihood of it occurring, and the impact of it does occur. The business analyst collaborate with the stakeholders to assess the risk based on the current understanding. Then we have the constraint, assumption, and dependency. Now here, these are the main key elements of the risk. So suppose we have some constraint, assumption, or dependency in the process or the task. So they will be called as an element of the risk. Then we have negative impact to the value. Now here, risks are expressed as condition that increase the likelihood or severity of the negative impact to the value. Then we have risk tolerance. So here we have to ask the question like how much uncertainty a stakeholder or the enterprise is willing to take on in exchange for the potential value that is referred to as the risk tolerance. Then we have the some recommendation like based on the analysis of the risk, business analyst recommend a course of action. Here, the business analyst work with the stakeholder to understand the overall risk level and the tolerance of the risk. Now, if we talk about the guidelines and the rules, so we have the business analysis approach. It guides how the business analyst analyzes the risk, and we have the business policies. So when we can define the limits within which the decision must be made. Then we have the change strategy. It provides a plan to transition from the current state to future state, which can achieve the desired business outcome. Then we have the current state description, which we already had discussed. And then we have the future state description. So we have to also log the risk or determine the risk that is associated with both. And then we have to do the identify risk. So it can be used as a starting point for the more to thorough risk assessment. This can be this can come from the risk analysis result from the elicitation activities from the previous business requirement analysis experience or based on the expert opinion. And then we have the stakeholder engagement approach. Now, if understanding the stakeholder groups helps identifying and assessing the potential impact of the internal and external forces, so it will be very helpful. And if we talk about the techniques, then we have brainstorming, then business cases, decision analysis, document analysis, financial analysis, interviews, lessons learned, mind mapping, risk analysis management, root cause analysis, and finally the workflow. These are the technique to identify or to assess the risk. And if we talk about the stakeholders, so we will have domain subject matter expert. So they also can provide some guidance on the risk, and we have the end users. So then we have the implementation SME, operational support, project manager, regulator, sponsor, supplier, and tester. So these are the stakeholders to assess the risk or to identify the risk. Now, after this, what will be the outputs? So we will have the risk analysis result. It is an understanding of the risk associated with the achieving the future state and the mitigation strategies which will be used to prevent those risks and also to reduce the impact of the risk and also to reduce the likelihood of the risk occurring. And if we talk about the risk log, so here the risk log sometimes interchangeably is referred to as a risk register also. So it is a framework and a tool which projects and companies use to identify, evaluate and mitigate the risk. Now, a risk log. is almost always takes the form of the register, where each row represents a risk and each column represents the element of the characteristic of the risk. And the risk log are usually created at the start of the project or phase of the work when the project manager and the team assessing the upcoming risk. Now here the risk log is then updated and maintained and referenced throughout the project. And then risk management is a critical and perpetual activity for all the project-based companies in many industries like construction, oil and gas, mining and manufacturing. In these high-risk industries, mitigating risk is one of the most important aspects of good and safe project delivery. Then the risk log can feature any kind of the risk, and how you create and rearrange your risk log will depend on the nature of your business as well as the resources at your disposal. Here, a risk log can should identify the safety, commercial, financial, environmental, and production related risks. You may have more categories beyond these, but which are applicable to your business. It is depending on the business and the nature of business. Now, if we take a look into the purpose of the risk log, so we have the purpose of the risk log in the project management is to record the detail of all the risks that have been identified and along with their analysis and the plans for how long how those risks will be treated. And then basically it's a log that identifies the risk along with their severity and the action, the steps to be taken to mitigate the risk. And here the risk register database can be viewed by the project manager as a management tool for monitoring the risk management processes within the project. And it is the responsibility of a project manager to ensure that the risk register is updated whenever necessary. And here the task of updating the risk register is usually delegated to project control function. Now, after understanding the risk, if we talk about the defining the change strategy, so we have when defining the change strategy, a business analyst apply a gap analysis between the current and the future state and decide on the option of the for the future state, and it provides the stakeholder with recommendation on the approach that will bring the highest value while reaching the future state. And in doing so, they develop and evaluate the multiple different approaches. Now, to give you the overview of the gap analysis, so it is nothing but the analysis of the requirement and what is achievable. So, what client demands or what stakeholder demands or expect, and what is feasible or what we have delivered so far. So, that gap we are analyzing. So, we that is called the gap analysis. And then properly define the change strategy should describe the context of the change, determine the alternative change strategy, justify the selected approach, estimate the resources needed, and identify the stakeholders. And also, it can explain the value of the change upon the delivered solution. Now, here the primary inputs for the defining the change strategy are current state description, future state description, risk analysis result, and the stakeholder engagement approach. Now, the output of this task are the change strategy and the solution scope. Now, if we talk about the several key elements that are a part of the defining the change strategy, so they are solution scope, gap analysis, enterprise readiness assessment, change strategy, transition state, and the release planning. And finally, defining the change strategy involves the following key stakeholder: customer, domain SME, end user, domain SME, operational support, project manager, regulators, sponsor, supplier, and tester, and so on. So, this is how we can define the change strategy. Now, in the next learning, so we will be discussing around the requirement analysis and design definition. So, with this, thank you.